Hola, ¿y cómo estás? Me llamo Chelsea Connolly y yo soy maestra de inglés para personas que no hablan inglés como su idioma primero. Y la meta de este video es mostrarte mis pensamientos y mis cualificaciones como maestra. Y también quiero compartir las experiencias de mis estudiantes y decirte cómo sus experiencias han tenido un afecto en mi profesión como maestra. All right, let me stop there. My name is Chelsea Connolly, and I am an English as a New Language teacher, an E&L teacher. And keep in mind that what I just did there with the Spanish thing was 30 seconds long. And in that 30 seconds, I bet, if you're not a fluent Spanish speaker, that you got a little frustrated and that you kind of wanted to know what I was saying, and maybe you caught bits and pieces from your high school Spanish or another way that you've picked up any kind of Spanish. But odds are you were pretty lost and that it was kind of frustrating. I kind of just wanted to give you an insight to how my English language learners feel on a daily basis in all of their content classes. They don't speak the same language natively as everyone who is in the class, and they're very aware of it. It is a challenge, as you probably saw from my little spiel there, and I kind of just wanted to share that with you as kind of an introduction to my job, my students, and why I chose to do this with my life. Another thing I wanted to do quickly, in addition to this language barrier that is not as problematic as you would think it is, I wanted to show you this and ask you to read it. Unless you've seen this before and unless you've heard somebody do this, you're probably reading this as goatee or something like that. Okay. What I didn't tell you was that I wanted to pronounce the GH in the way that it's pronounced in the word tough. The GH sounds like an F in tough for whatever reason. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, we're gonna call this an F. And you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll write it just so that we have something clear there. Okay. F. I also didn't tell you I wanted to pronounce the O in the way that it's pronounced in the word women. Suddenly our O sounds like an I. I don't really know what's happening here, but there we go. This one, okay. And the last part, this TI, I want you to pronounce it the way that it's pronounced in the word nation. That TI, in that case, makes the SH sound for whatever reason, and GHOTI, based on some pronunciations of these combinations of letters, spells fish. So in addition to not speaking the same language as everyone else in the building, E&L students have to deal with the fact that they're learning a language that sometimes makes absolutely no sense. Nobody's shy about it, we know. Sometimes English can be really tricky. And that's why I'm here. I'm here, I love the English language. I love learning about other languages, but I'm here to support these wonderful students as they make their transitions into a new country and into a new school while learning language, content, and whatever this is simultaneously. Well, now that I've given you a little bit of an insight into my students in their everyday life and into how hard it can be to learn a new language, especially one that's as complicated as English, I wanted to highlight some of the major points of my teaching philosophy. And really the most basic part of my teaching philosophy is that all students can learn. When they are supported, when they are given the scaffolds, and when their instruction is differentiated to meet their specific learning needs, every single student can succeed. My major role in most of my classrooms is to make the content accessible to my students by differentiating, whether it's differentiating the instruction, or maybe if the class is reading a text, to give my students a text that's written in English that they're used to seeing. It's essential, and by doing this, we level the playing field. That's kind of my favorite way that people use to describe it. We're working on getting the English language learners or students with IEPs or 504s to be at the same level that everyone else is at, so that the content really can be accessible to everybody. Another thing that kind of helps that happen, that all students can learn, is that the lessons need to be exciting, engaging, and we all know at this point that we cannot just sit students in desks and talk at them and expect them to learn anything, because that's just not what's happening. we make lessons exciting by tapping into students' interests and their background knowledge and their experiences. And this is especially important in the case of English language learners, because more often than not, they are lacking some kind of background experience that people who grew up in the United States have. And by tapping into their interests and what you know about them and really knowing them as people, you're able to engage them. You're able to help them make the connections that the people around them are making so easily because they grew up in the United States and they have the same background experiences of the teacher who's teaching. So, sum that up. Making lessons exciting, you need to know your students as people, and you need to understand that they're not going to learn by listening to you talk. You know, it involves collaboration. It involves letting them get up and move, get some kinesthetics in there. You know, teach to multiple different teaching styles. And at some point, you're going to get everybody. You know, everybody's got something that's going to really get that fire burning in their bellies, you know. And another big part of my philosophy, especially with the work that I'm doing now, is being a supportive faculty member. I work with 5 different teachers directly every single day. Okay, we co-plan, we co-teach, we vent to each other, we are swapping ideas back and forth, and we're supporting each other. And that is the reason that these co-teaching relationships work. Even with teachers that I'm not directly working with, it is important to let people know, like, hey, you know, I'm here if you need to talk to somebody, if we want to swap ideas back and forth. Teaching is hard. Teaching English is hard. Teaching math is hard. Everything. It's a difficult job, and we need to support one another to help both our students and to, you know, help each other. Nobody wants to burn out, and I can only imagine how much easier it is to burn out when you're surrounded by people who very obviously don't want to be there and people who just, you know, want to put their years in and retire. It's important. Really in any job, but especially in teaching, that we support one another and that we let each other know that we're here, you know? It's important. Another thing that I think is important to note in especially the case of ENL is that, you know, family communication is important. And all teachers know that. But in the case of ENL, sometimes it's really difficult and it's not very accessible to us because, you know, our students' parents don't speak English. And I'm lucky enough to work in a district where if I need a translator and I need to call a parent meeting, I have it. It's all, they'll take care of it. But, you know, in cases where it needs to be immediate or something like that, there's Google Translate and all these things that we can use to make it happen. But it's just so important that we keep parents updated on how their students are progressing, and even that we not only just call them for the bad things, but to let them know where their students are succeeding. Here at my school, we have this nice little ceremony where teachers once a quarter nominate students, and I always try to make sure that I nominate an ENL student so that their family can come and see everything their student has done and to see the positive community that we have here of people who are supporting one another. And that it's important to note that in my philosophy, because ENL, we have a very specific relationship with our students and with these families. We really are the go-to people when they have questions about not just school, about lots of different things. And despite a language barrier, that relationship is important. And I, as a teacher, I like to do whatever I can to make sure that that my students' parents know who I am, what I do, and that I am available for them. Whatever, I'll make it work, whatever they need. And then really, the last big thing that I want to hit here is this question that people ask all the time. You know, we got asked it in undergrad, and my principals even ask it to us sometimes, and it's, what does your ideal classroom look like? I do not know the answer to that question, because not all teaching happens in a classroom. At my other school that I work at right now, I don't have a classroom. Sometimes I'm in the library, sometimes I'm in the hallway at a table outside the cafeteria, sometimes I'm in the gym, sometimes learning happens in a lot of different places. And really, I like to think that as long as I'm in a room with students that I've gotten to know really well and who I have a relationship with, some really wonderful learning will take place. And with an idea, we're not going to have, if we ever move districts around, we're never going to have access to the same kinds of things that we have. Right now I'm very lucky and I have access to computers and iPads and Elmos and all these different things. But I'd like to think that if I went anywhere else where maybe those things weren't as accessible to me and I just had a room full of students who wanted to learn English, or even who didn't, and a group of students that I needed to motivate to learn English, that I could use everything that I've learned in this first year of teaching to make that happen, to make that ideal classroom for myself. It's going to be different for every population of students. So to kind of wrap that up, my big idea, every single student can learn when they're in the right environment, and when parents are involved in the education, when students are involved in their own education, when teachers are working together to make sure that students learn. That's just what it is. So I hope that you've gained something from this. I hope that you have a new insight to my job as an ENL teacher and the experiences that my students have every day in school. And I do hope to talk to you soon in person. Have a nice day.